I'm James McKechnie from Charles Sturt University. Welcome to Charles Sturt University's Exploration Series, Taking You Higher, in conjunction with One Giant Leap Australia Foundation. We'd like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri, Ngunnawal, Gundungurra and Biripi peoples of Australia, who are the traditional owners and custodians of the lands on which Charles Sturt University's campuses are located, as well as traditional owners and custodians of the lands from which you are all participating this evening, and pay respect to the elders both past and present. I'd like now to hand you over to Michael, who will be our moderator for the evening.
Thank you, James, and a very good evening, a very good morning, a very good day, wherever you are around the world. We've got people all over the planet watching, so hello and thank you for joining us and welcome. So you'd like to be an astronaut? Well, welcome to Taking You Higher, Women in Space, brought to you by Charles Sturt University and One Giant Leap Australia Foundation. My name is Michael Davern from One Giant Leap, and I'm very pleased to introduce to you one of the student ambassadors of One Giant Leap. Please welcome Coco Dobby. Hello, Coco.
Michael, how are you?
Hello, there you are in your flight suit, which you acquired at Space Camp with One Giant Leap. How was that? Tell us about that briefly.
It was incredible. I went in October last year and I did so many amazing things. It was absolutely the best thing I've ever done.
That's incredible. I'm very excited to go to space. I've never been. Am I too old to go, do you think?
Absolutely not. Never too old to go.
Oh, good. And I should also point out that you are not only a student ambassador with One Giant Leap, you're also a future astronaut.
Yes, that's the goal. That's the dream.
Yeah, you'll be there. You'll be going to Mars.
Yeah, that's me.
Excellent. So we've got some fantastic speakers tonight from the space industry. Tell us a bit about them.
All right, so we've got Alice Gorman speaking to us today. She's coming on first and she's going to tell us a bit about what she does in space archaeology. So that's pretty interesting. Then we've got Shannon. So Shannon's done some pretty amazing things with space. All these women are extremely inspiring and they're going to tell you so much. You're going to come out of this and you're going to feel so amazing. And then last up, our last speaker is Sally. So Sally is going to be an astronaut also, and she's been flying, she's been watching space launches, she's done everything. So it'll be pretty good.
That's terrific. And we've got a little bit of a poll going we should mention as well.
Yes, we do. So we've got two questions for you today. Our first question is, where are you tuning in from? So we want to know, we've got people all around the world, or all around Australia rather, sorry. But yeah, where are you? And yeah.
Great, to get an idea.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry.
Where everyone's tuning in from.
Yeah.
It should be up on your screens now. So
feel
free to go ahead and
Interesting. There we go.
We've got a lot from regional Australia. That's quite good. 9% outside Australia. That's very exciting.
That's great.
Yeah. Our second poll today, should we start on that one? We want to know what your age is. So where are you watching with your parents? Who are you watching with?
We'll give everyone a minute to answer that. That's terrific. It gives us an idea. And as you said, people from all over the place, all over Australia,
yes.
Watching tonight or this morning, depending on where you are. Well, I may as well give it over to you to have a chat to our speakers and tell us let's get to know them and find out what they've got to tell us.
Yes, easy. All right. So we've got Alice speaking to us first today. So Alice Gorman is internationally recognised in the field of space archaeology. She focuses on the heritage of space exploration, including space junk, space habitats, off-Earth mining, and rocket launch pads. She's an associate professor at Flinders University in Adelaide and a heritage consultant with over 25 years worth of experience working with Indigenous communities. So in a collaboration with NASA and Chapman University, she's conducting the first archaeological study of the International Space Station. You can read her amazing book, Dr. Space Junk vs. the Universe, which has won the NIB Literary Award among several others. So Alice, what are you going to talk to us about today?
I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means to be an archaeologist in space, and I'll tell you a little bit about my archaeological project on the International Space Station as well. But I also want to mention I'm currently a mentor in the United Nations Space for Women program, which is aimed at encouraging girls and women to get into STEM fields, to get involved in space. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well before we finish my section.
Amazing. That sounds perfect. I'll hand it over to you now.
Okay, so very excited to be here. I'm going to share my screen with you because I have a few illustrations to go with what I'm going to talk about. So just getting that up now. So hopefully everybody can see this. So we started our session tonight with the question, so you want to be an astronaut? But I'm actually going to start with one good way not to be an astronaut. So in 2015 and 2020, NASA put out a call for astronaut candidates. As part of this call, they outlined the qualifications and experience that they wanted people to have. This is what they wanted people to have, but they were also very clear about what they didn't want. And guess what? Archaeology and anthropology were two of the fields named as not being qualifying to apply to be an astronaut candidate. So this incensed a colleague of mine, Associate Professor Justin Walsh from Chapman University in California. And he started thinking about how can we persuade NASA that they actually do need archaeologists and people with archaeological skills. And he rang me up one day very excited and said, right, I've got it. This is what we're going to do. We are going to conduct the first archaeological study of the International Space Station, which is currently orbiting above our heads at about 400 kilometers with 3 people on board. The International Space Station has been continuously occupied for 20 years. Its 20th anniversary is coming up on the 2nd of November. It's one of the largest, it is the largest spacecraft ever launched and one of the most complex. At the moment, it is a collaboration between a whole number of different space agencies and governments and organizations. So it's truly international. And over 240 people have been to it, including the 3 people who are currently up there. So it's a massive project. At the moment, it may only last until 2024. So our archaeological study is basically the only time that this is likely to happen. So what are we really doing with this? People say, how can you do this? It's not an old site, it's not abandoned, and it's still going. But this doesn't mean we can't study how crew interact with objects and spaces so that we can try and perceive patterns in how they actually live in space. Our problem is we can't go there. Archaeologists are not allowed, and it's incredibly expensive, millions of dollars. So what we're doing in our project is using NASA's image archive, up to 7 million photographs taken of crew working on board the International Space Station. And we're going to apply machine learning algorithms to these images to try and pick up these patterns, how people routinely use objects, how they break out of what's expected and adapt them to new ways. And we also have the inventory management system NASA uses to log every object that goes into the International Space Station and comes back out of the International Space Station. What we hope to learn by doing this is, of course, something about human behavior. But more than that, we want to understand how a human society is created in these very unique conditions, living in free fall or microgravity, living in this very sparse little self-contained world in a very small community. And our very early analysis, just looking at these photographs, has shown us a couple of really interesting things. One is that crew members on the ISS stick pictures up everywhere, and these change over time. And we can learn something about what is important to them, the things that they believe, the messages they convey with these pictures. So that's results that are going to be published soon. We're also looking at simple things like plastic Ziploc bags, which thousands and thousands are used on the International Space Station. They're so common that you hardly even notice. But they're also critical to keeping objects in place and to remembering where objects are within the station. So these little bits of plastic actually stand in for human memory in the absence of gravity, in the absence of them. Also found by analysing these images that more women use the cupola or the cupola where they can look out on Earth. And this is really interesting, particularly as only 11.4 women. And this leads me to my next theme, which is the more women into space. This project is aimed at meeting 2 of the UN Sustainable Development, which is about education. As part of this program, something I thought I would do is investigate the very unique history of Australian women in space, to not assume everything is generic, to find out something that has contributed to where Australians are right now. And a wonderful story I discovered was after Valentina Tereshkova, the first woman in space, took a historic flight in 1963. She was then the guest of honour at the World Congress of Women held in Moscow that year. And a group of Australians went over. They took with them a scarf that came from Perth. And one of their number, Mary Smale, rushed up to Valentina, gave her a big hug and presented her with this scarf on behalf of the women of Australia. So for me, that's space archaeology. I want to know what happened to that scarf as an artifact. Is it in some museum in Moscow somewhere? And I also want to know what happened when Mary Smale came back to Wollongong. How did she talk about space in the community? How did this ripple out through regional Australia to inspire perhaps another generation of girls? So this is an ongoing project. I've not finished it yet. I've only really just started it. The other thing I wanted to finish with is a story from Douglas Adams' famous trilogy, A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So in this story, on the planet Golga Frincham, they divided the population into 3 parts. The important part, the workers who did all the work, and the middle management, which included occupations like hairdressers and telephone sanitizers. They put them into a spaceship and sent them off into space, telling them that all those other parts of the population would join them soon. And then they got on with their lives. They abandoned them until the entire population of Golga Frincham was wiped out by a disease caught from a dirty telephone. So the moral of my story here is the people you think are essential may in fact not be the only ones that you need to create and sustain a society in space. There are all kinds of work and careers and professions that we are going to need in the future that everyone is hoping for, where human populations are living in orbit and on other planets. So I want you to take this as inspiration that you don't just have to be an astronaut. You can be any one of these numbers of careers and have these skills, and there may still be a place for you in space. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alice. That was amazing. That was really inspiring. So we've got some questions for you now. We've got Meredith from Leichhardt, who's asked if there are any plans to mine space junk or to collect and clean it up.
Oh, there are so many plans. And in fact, there's an Australian researcher and company, Paddy Neumann, who has worked out a way to use space junk as rocket fuel. So there are possibilities for salvaging space junk and giving it new purposes. We also have many people working on the issue of trying to remove dangerous junk from orbit. At this point in time, we can't do it, but it's hopeful to think that there are many people working on the technologies we need to do that. So that's definitely also an area that we could use more people doing research and expressing their interest in.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. We've got one last question for you before we move on to Shannon. And that is, how can you see space archaeology advancing in our future, and what do you think it's going to become as an industry?
A really interesting question. I hope that looking at the traces of human material culture that we leave throughout the solar system will become, a standard way of understanding what we're doing in space. So I hope there's going to be new generations of space archaeologists who may be focusing all of their attention on Mars and Venus. They may be saying, here are things that are, culturally important that we need to keep. They may be studying the hardware and the technologies to try and understand what humans are actually doing instead of what they say they're doing. So I'd like to think that it's a growth area with lots of potential.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Well, that's all we've got time for at the moment, but there will be lots more questions at the end. So next speaking to us, we're going to have Shannon. So Shannon McConnell has led the Galileo Outreach Team, the Cassini Formal Education Team, and the Deep Space Network Education and Public Outreach Office. Before her work in outreach and education, Shannon worked in mission planning and design for the Cassini spacecraft, sequence design and execution for the Galileo mission, and data analysis for the Magellan mission. Shannon has also worked in payload operations for 2 space shuttle flights managed by JPL, which is the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Shannon has visited over 50 countries, 10 sovereign territories, and all 50 US states. Her travels have taken her all throughout 7 continents, across both the Arctic and Antarctic circles, through the African Serengeti, Europe, and among many other places. She loves bringing the excitement of all kinds of travel to people around the world. Shannon has penned numerous technical articles for NASA, along with the current event opinion pieces, STEM education articles, and even a full-length novel. So Shannon holds bachelor's and master's degrees in astronomy and environmental engineering from the University of Southern Carolina, as well as being a committee chair for the Pasadena Tournament of Roses and a member of the board of directors for Don Bosco Technical Institute, a project-based STEM-focused high school in Rosemead, California. That is a mouthful, Shannon. What are you going to talk to us about today?
Thank you. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm going to follow up on Al. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're all good.
Perfect. Just double checking. I'm going to continue on what Alice was talking about a little bit about different types of careers that you can aspire to and still work in space science, even if you don't want to study rocket science.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll let you get started then.
Perfect. All right. So we'll go ahead and start right up, and I have some background slides that you'll be watching while I speak. So I just wanted to say welcome to everyone. I know in Australia this is Friday evening. I just want to let everyone know that I'm in California and it is currently 1:20 in the morning here. So if I sound a little bit tired, that's because it's the middle of the night here. So I wanted to follow up and talk a little bit today about the different types of careers you can go into and still work in space science. So you don't necessarily need to study traditional STEM fields and be successful in a career in space exploration. But I do want to start off with, boy, I even get distracted with that photo sometimes. I do want to start and say, obviously, the main career points or main careers that we use or that we employ from are your traditional STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math majors. And then we also, of course, employ a lot of computer science people, computer programmers, and IT professionals. And those are kind of the ones that you would think about, right away. Oh, I want to work for NASA. What should I study? But I wanted to also point out that NASA is a big organization, and as any big organization with a lot of employees, we have a lot of other types of careers that you can go into besides those traditional STEM fields. We have a strong media presence, so we need people who are multimedia, they're video production specialists, they do podcasting, that type of work. And associated with that, we do a lot of writing, a lot of technical writing, but web articles. You can tell how old I am. So a lot of writing oriented fields also you can go into. You can go into human resources. This is the type of the backroom support type work that goes on at any large organization where you are working with personnel management and those types of things and helping the other employees of the agency or the place you work, handle things such as, taking a leave of absence or, taking time off or looking at your medical or whatever it is, but the human resources is a great way to go. When we put astronauts into the mix, some of you want to be astronauts. Obviously, we have medical staff that work with the astronauts, both leading up to their flights and then also on when astronauts are in space. They work with them through the comm system, kind of like we're doing tonight. And then, of course, we also have lawyers. And again, it's a big organization. You have a lot of legal support, environmental legal support, employment law, technicals, different types of technical law. So you can go into all sorts of really interesting and engaging fields, work in space science without actually being a rocket scientist. So I have degrees in astronomy and environmental engineering. So I am definitely not a rocket scientist. I have more interest in field sciences, geology, and environmental science and that type of work. So, just a different bent. I have a friend who is a rocket scientist, I have a friend who's a geologist. I have a friend who's a physicist. So, but I often get asked a lot of times, what types of things can I do? I'm in school. What types of things can I do to help me stand out as an applicant for a place like NASA or SpaceX or wherever you might want to work? Well, obviously, you hear this all day long, get good grades. Obviously, get good grades. But you also want to practice kind of some of those, what we call soft skills. You want to work on your interpersonal skills. You want to learn how to work in teams. That's one of the things I love about the Space Camp program, is you learn a lot of teamwork that goes on in there. You want to practice your writing skills. That boring English essay that your English teacher gave you is not so boring if you look at it that way. You want to, and you also want to get comfortable speaking in front of an audience. And that's, no matter what field you go into, you're going to end up having to speak in front of an audience, whether it's in front of a board of directors to present a project, or a group of supervisors to present a project, or to secure funding for a project. So, look around your school and join a drama class or a debate class or public speaking class, and get comfortable in those types of environments, because it's super important. And most importantly, have an open explorer's mind. One of the great things about working in space science and space exploration is that you are working in this cutting edge field where literally we're sending things out in space. We're sending spaceships out in space, and we don't always know what we're going to find. Just look at Cassini. Cassini went to Saturn. We had flown 2 spacecraft, well, actually 4 spacecraft past Saturn at the time that Cassini went to Saturn. So we knew some things about it, but we didn't know that Titan had lakes of liquid methane, and we didn't know that Enceladus had active geysers spewing ice into the E-ring. And we didn't know that the North Pole of Saturn was a hexagonal shape. We didn't know a lot of these things. So you're coming into an unknown environment all the time, and to have that open mind and have that sense of exploration is key to that. So that's about all I was going to talk about tonight. I don't know if Coco, you want to fire up some of those questions, because I had a lot of questions, I know.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll have about 2 questions now, I think, and then again,
Okay.
massive Q&A session at the end. So a question I've been getting a lot is, what's your advice for more mature age people trying to start in the space industry? And is it ever too late to actually get that started?
It's never too late. That's always my feeling. It's never too late to change careers. But I think if you're more of a mature individual and you have a career already in if it's in a related STEM field, even if it's something like pharmaceuticals, that gives you obviously a leg up, because you're not uncomfortable in the math and science world. But know that whatever career you're coming from has its own skill sets, and try to capitalize on what you're strong in, and then move, and then you have to build up the other things that you need to work on, if it's math, or if it's the physics, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, for sure. That makes heaps of sense. And the second question we had for the moment is from Clara from Sydney, and she's asked to know what you would recommend for a student interested in the same career as you. So that's the environmental engineering kind of thing, and what your personal experience was with learning and commitment to that.
So that's an interesting question. So I went back, I was actually working in earth sciences for NASA at the time that I went back and got that degree. So it was a natural fit for where I thought I was going to go. Environmental science, my degree is actually in environmental engineering, so it's slightly different than environmental science. We look at the different processes and engineering practices that we can use in the field of environmental science. It's slightly different, but I would say, what was the question again? It is 1:30 in the morning after all.
Oh, sorry. No, that's absolutely okay. Don't even worry about it. The question was, what would you recommend for someone trying to get into that industry, and what's your personal experience with learning and commitment?
Okay. Yes. Okay. Got it. So I went in and I got into that industry when it was really, really hot in the US. I mean, everybody was going into environmental science or environmental engineering. And I would recommend it because it's a very broad-based field, which is really nice. So if you get into it and you say, gee, I could, I'm really interested in building power systems for Mars bases, let's say. That's a classic thing that you would do in environmental engineering. But you also find that you're taking some courses in things like wastewater management, which sounds really boring, but it's really interesting when you get involved with it. And you might be able to apply that knowledge in that side of the house too, because anything that you need for a regional system, a community system on Earth to function, lights, power, sewer, all that stuff, you have to have on Mars too. So it's a great field from that standpoint to just be able to go into from a broad, like I said, a broad-based standpoint.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. Well, that's all we've got time for now, I think, but we're going to have lots more questions for the very end. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Sally now, if you want to. Awesome. So Sally started flying when she was only 14 because flying was the only thing she could think of that was faster than her brother's race car. When she started flying, you had to be a pilot to be an astronaut, even though in those days NASA was expecting, and sorry, that's my bad. But these days, NASA is accepting geologists, biologists, engineers, and botanists. She did everything she could to be on the space shuttle program, but was grounded. Now, though, Sally is shortlisted with the Advancing X to be launched into space in 2023. She's looking forward to joining the other candidates to train and be tested, and most importantly, to tell you all about it today. So what are you going to be talking to us about?
Well, I had a bit of a think about it, and with being asked to come on the panel, everyone was saying, tell us your story. And then I thought about that and thought, actually, I think that's a bit of rubbish because no one really wants to know my story. I think anyone who's dialing in right now, they want to know how they get to space. So I'm going to help answer those questions because no one really cares how I get to space because you're going to be sitting back with your cup of tea going, yeah, oh, well and good for you, love. But how do I get to space? So what I think you should do is exactly what everyone seems to be doing at the moment is don't ask people like Alice and Shannon and myself what we did, because that's already in the past. I wrote to NASA when I was 7 years old. They sent me a big letter and I've still got it. It's awesome. And it was a booklet on the 1970 astronaut selection program. We're not selecting astronauts based on the 1970 requirements at the moment. And what's really great about sci-fi at the moment, and there is some great TV episodes advertising it, is the first astronauts that were scheduled to go into space actually weren't the Mercury 7. They were a group of women called the Mercury 13 because under science, women were more petite, they ate less calories, they weighed less, and they consumed less air. So actually, next to the monkey, yay, Mercury 13, it was women that were scheduled, and it was that famous speech that we will put a man on the moon that changed that. And that's not right or wrong, that's just history. So let's not be stuck in the past going, what did the Mercury 7 study? Because that's what I'll study, because at the time, and it's made famous by Tom Wolfe's book, The Right Stuff, they overlooked a very highly qualified gentleman by the name of Major General Chuck Yeager because he didn't have a university degree. So what I would say to do for you out there, if you want to get into space, is just be the best you can be at your field. And as Alice proved, NASA originally thought we didn't need archaeologists, and now we certainly are going to need archaeologists, because if we go, we have to find water to hopefully make fuel. So I think it's really important to take the boundaries that we've been using as selection criteria and break them. And thank you, they've put up my slides because there's really no need for you to be all staring at my ugly mug for 6 minutes. That's one of the things I do is you train by going scuba diving. You set yourself challenges. You need to learn how to function in high stress situations. So for those of you that have older siblings like I did who raced cars, that is learning how to function in a high stress situation. So you do whatever works for you. And what I found was very interesting about the Advancing X program is they took what I'm calling the slight arrogance of NASA, which is the best people in the world have to be from the United States. And they're smashing that and they're opening it up to the world and saying, all right, you show us what you've got. Send us in your credentials and you tell us about your skill set. And Shannon touched on that very, very well. You need to be able to network. You need to be able to sell yourself. And so when the Advancing X program came up, one of their first challenges, which we can talk about because it's public on their website, was to put yourself on social media telling the world you're going to be an astronaut and why you're going to be an astronaut. And I loved that, because if you're not brave enough to go into your local school, to just stand up and represent and say, I know that the vast majority of the population thinks this is insane, but I'm going to do it anyway, then you will do it and you will be successful and you will find all those positions in the aerospace community that are there for you. And now more than ever, it's not just NASA, it's not just SpaceX, it's Virgin Galactic, it's YASA, it's so many of these new startup organizations that are doing brilliantly. And sometimes you need to be brave and join a startup, and you never know where they're going to go. And myself and my other 5 crew members, who we call ourselves the Submersible 6, because we wanted a name as cool as the Mercury 13, we were the pilot group 1 for the Advancing X program, and they're now doing such a good job that they're getting contracts with the level of training that they're doing. Dr. Eduardo Diaz will be able to answer more questions than that, because I'm not allowed to talk about what we're allowed to do. But it's really important that to get to space, you just need to want to, but to actually get selected, you just need the best version of yourself you are. So don't try and be me, don't try and be Alice, or don't try and be Shannon, just be you. So I think what I'll do is open it up to some of the questions, because I know that I've been warned that I have a few of them. So rather than talk about my flying, which no one really wants to know, they just want to know how to get them into space, fire away.
Awesome. That sounds good. So first question is from Mary from Brisbane, and she's asked, what's the greatest hurdle you've had to overcome in your career to date this far, and how did you do that?
Right. So we all know that we're sitting in this year called 2020 at the moment. And so I'm going to say that the biggest hurdle in my career, and this is not a challenge for Eduardo to up the ante on our Advancing X challenges, but I started the year as a married international airline pilot, and I now find myself as a single mom in banking because COVID grounded flying and my company had to go into administration. And so I was made redundant. And that's just life. And I think that my fundamental philosophy is the only thing that we can control in life is how we behave. So whilst I would love to be flying aeroplanes and doing my research on overnights and doing all that kind of great stuff, it is what it is. I've got a great job. I'm able to work from home, and you're able to step back and go, okay, actually not everyone's doing poorly in this climate. Healthcare workers are doing amazingly. IT companies, space hasn't stopped launching. SpaceX launched DM1 through a pandemic. So I think it's really important that when setting yourself a major goal, like wanting to be an astronaut, wanting to join a space program in any capacity, let's not let a little thing like a pandemic or 2020 get in our way. We're just going to pull our socks up and keep on trucking.
Awesome. That sounds about right. Now, question for now, we'll have lots more later again, but this is actually one of my questions. And speaking as someone who does want to be an astronaut, for me, I know what it is that I love about space and what's propelling me to kind of get there. What is it for you? What's the biggest thing that you think about and you go, that's what I want to do. That's what's making me do this?
I think it's just that everything pivotal in science comes from space. Medicines are trialed in space. We're looking at really advanced technologies in terms of human body. And I'm just of the fundamental belief that we are destroying this planet. And so if everyone wants to live, you got to hitch a ride with us, because we're the only people that are going to be able to take you to where we've figured out better. So that's always been my fundamental principle. And also space has been always the forefront of science. And I've never done anything to want to be third or fourth. I always want to do what's the hardest, the fastest, and the best. That is space.
Absolutely, that makes heaps of sense. So that's, I'm gonna thank you to all our speakers for now. I'm gonna hand over to Michael for a second.
I'm going to join in. Hello.
Yes, he's back.
How are you? That was amazing. Sorry, Coco.
No, that's okay. Just saying that we'll have our Q&A at the end after you do a little bit of.
Yeah, well, I'm here to basically field some questions we've got coming in from the Q&A from everybody out there. And hello to everyone out there. Thank you again for joining us. I hope you're having a great time. There's been some terrific discussions here, amazing stuff. I'm going to we've got everyone here. That's great. So I'm going to just open up some of these Q&As. Somebody was asking, can an astronaut, do we have to be in America to work for NASA? And Shannon, you perhaps answered that earlier. What would you say to someone asking about that?
Yeah, so I did answer that in written form, but I will be happy to answer it to the whole group. You do not obviously necessarily need to be in America to work for NASA. We do have, just in the group I work with, we have two overseas communications complexes for space communications. One of them's outside of Madrid, Spain, and the other one's right outside Canberra. So you could actually work outside Canberra, live in Canberra. I know it's exciting. To some of you.
Canberra's a great place.
Work in space. I love it, but yeah. And there are other opportunities for researchers. A lot of our science team members are at universities that are not in the US, and they work on US based, NASA based flight missions, science research. So yeah, you do not need to be in America to work for NASA, but if you want to work on spacecraft hardware, yes, you do.
Yeah. Coco, you've got some other questions there that have been sent in prior.
I do. Yes, I found an interesting one here for Sally. This is from Pamela from Bangor. And she said, I'm a mentor for women in STEM. Given the long time frames for projects for space and the strong competition, what is your best advice on developing resilience to stay in the sector?
Just don't leave. Like, what's really interesting was every single colleague of mine who I was in flight school with, everyone who stuck it out got a job. It was only the people that pulled out, that didn't just repeat the exercise or did what they have to do to finish the program, didn't make it. But for everyone who just stuck it out and we stuck together, we all ended up with the jobs that we wanted, working for the companies that we all wanted. And so I think it's really important that, particularly for students, if you don't get the ATAR score or your SATs, wherever your country that you're in, that doesn't actually define you. You can go and do a course and then matriculate back into the course that you originally wanted to get into. Like, there is no prize for being the first or the youngest person to do something. If you want to get there, you just stick it out and do it. And if you stick it out, you will do it.
Awesome, thank you. I've got, sorry, Mike.
No, go ahead.
You go ahead. I've just got one here that I quite like, actually. This is for everyone, not directed at anyone particularly. But this is Jay from Brisbane, who said, how do you tame your inner critique, especially when you know your achievements could possibly affect others? And that's one I think I'm going to need to hang on to as well, this answer.
Anyone want to have a crack at that one? Your inner critic.
I'm going to steal a quote from Jim Lovell because I use it all the time, and I'm really thankful. Hopefully none of my work colleagues are on this chat to say, you don't do that at all. But there's really no point in bouncing off the walls for 3 minutes in a rage to then realize that the situation you're in hasn't changed. So like I said before, the only thing that we can control is our behavior. There are some people who think in 2020 being asked to stay home and eat takeout is a struggle. I'm not finding it that hard. So I think it's about perspective. And yeah, you just need to realize that critique is healthy. You need to be able to self-reflect and improve, but not at the detriment of your outcome, your team, your family, the whole process. So, and also to get into aviation aerospace, it's not a single person job. You know, it's not a running race that you cross the line first. To get there, you are going to need help, which means you need to network and be kind to an awful lot of people.
Of course, Jim Lovell from Apollo 13, and Shannon, I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, but you were on the premises when they were filming that fantastic film, weren't you?
Oh, I was, yes.
Did you meet anyone famous?
I did.
I won't embarrass you.
No, they came in and watched us because we were on a swing. I was on swing, so I was working 4 p.m. to midnight. And they would get off about 11, so they'd come in and watch us fly shuttle. It was cool.
What an amazing experience. Coco, you got some more questions there?
Yes, I do. I've where did it go? Oh yes, this is for Alice. This is Sam from Perth, and they've said, what would you like to see as the achieved gender ratio percentage for space travelers, and when do you think that's going to happen?
Well, as I mentioned before, of the over 600 people who've been into space on all human spaceflight missions, only 11.5% are women. I would like to see that be 50% by, I mean, we've got to be realistic about this. Let's say in 15 years' time, I would like to see that approaching 50%. So maybe that's a little bit ambitious, but I think if everybody's on the same page and working together, then maybe we'll get there.
Awesome. Michael, do we have any interesting questions you can see on the Q&A chat here?
We've got a few coming in, yeah. We've got a question for Shannon here. Do you see the continued rise of cooperation between private space technology companies and larger government organizations like NASA leading to further opportunities for non-space traditional fields? That's from Joshua.
Yes, I absolutely see that. Anytime you have a partnership, a corporate partnership between different agencies or corporate government partnership, you just look at not just the growth of jobs within those two partnerships, but all of the subcontractors and support teams that supply for those. So yes, I see a lot of potential for growth coming forward in jobs and fields that I can't even imagine right now, that don't exist at the moment.
Right. Coco, have you got any more questions? I hope that answers your question there, Joshua. Coco, you've got some more questions that have been sent in.
Yes, I do. So this is for Shannon also, but feel free everyone to answer this. I feel like it'll be a group.
How are you going, Shannon? It's very late there. You're yes. Still, you got your coffee? You're good?
Still awake. This is from Evelyn's kids from Melbourne. And they've said, how do spacesuits actually keep you safe? And how do they actually calculate how much fuel is required for emissions? So 2 different kinds.
Yes, I got that the other day, and it was really interesting because how you calculate 2 completely different questions. How you calculate how much fuel you need to take for on a mission, there are people that is their job. That is all they do. And because you have to know where you're going, how heavy your launch vehicle is, how long it's going to take you to get there, how many burns of that main engine you're going to have to do to get from Earth to where you're going, how many burns you're going to have to do to get into orbit or go by the planet you're going by, or all of the science research that you want to do at your destination. And you have to account for all sorts of other little changes in your course corrections, things like that. So that's actually somebody's full-time job on most missions, which is amazing. And what cracked me up was when I got that, I'm like, gee, I don't actually know how spacesuits keep you safe past the micrometeorite part. So I had to look it up also. And I know spacesuits are kind of like these self-contained biohabitats, and they have their own heating and circulation systems and oxygen systems running in them. But beyond that, I went and I found some NASA websites to explore and did a lot of reading. So I highly recommend that that Evelyn's kids do the same thing, because I actually found a couple of really good NASA websites on that. By the way, one of the NASA websites, when you Google it, is on the, don't ask, the Spanish language NASA site, but the article's in English. So don't let the Spanish headers fool you. That's a really good article.
Awesome. I've got one here from Isha, not sure, sorry. And they've said, what challenges are common to face when trying to get into NASA?
Oh gosh. I think Sally really kind of walked around this question a little bit. NASA is a very competitive place to get a job at, and I think don't give up is really the key, and network. When I got out of college, I graduated in May and I didn't get the job until August. And it was, and those were in the days before the internet, when you filled out an application with pen and ink, I tell you. I kept looking at jobs. I really wanted to work at JPL because it was so convenient locally to me, and I liked the work they were doing. And I filled out the application, and then I started calling. I had a friend who'd gotten a job there that I'd gone to college with, and we used the alumni connection from the university, and I just kept calling people until somebody finally basically got me a job so that I'd stop bugging them, I think.
I've got a question here that's partially directed to you, Coco. People wanting to find out about Space Camp. What did you do there?
Pretty much Space Camp was about a week long. I went with One Giant Leap, so that's Jackie and Bob, and we did a whole trip beforehand. We went to Disneyland and Universal, we went to Northrop Grumman and met up with Shannon actually in IHOP, so that was pretty fun. But Space Camp is pretty much, it's a lot of team building kind of thing, like what I think Alice said before, a lot of trying to work together on missions. Missions where you get to dress up as the astronaut, or you're in mission control, and that's about 4 hours those. But yeah, really a lot of working together, a lot of using your brain to kind of problem solve and creative problem solve, and just meeting people and having lots of fun. That was my favorite thing about it, I think.
Sounds great. We had a couple of questions about the cost. Obviously, things are a little bit in flux at the moment, so costing's a little bit nebulous. But due to the airlines not giving pricing, etc., if you can contact Jackie or Bob at One Giant Leap Foundation Australia, or at onegiantleap@bigpond.com. That's onegiantleap@bigpond.com, or you might want to go over to onegiantleapfoundation.com.au. Any other questions there? Sorry, go ahead.
Just going to say, Jackie and Bob are absolutely the way to go. They've got everything under control. I had so much fun when I went with them.
Yeah, they're great. They do some amazing work with young people, they're really, really helpful and passionate about space, which I think I'd imagine, and this is open up to everyone, that's a huge ingredient in terms of succeeding in the space industry, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Passion. Yeah. Actually being engaged with it to the point where you're just always thinking about it. Isn't that right, Coco?
Yes.
Have you got any more questions? We've got about 5 minutes left. Any more questions? Then we can let Shannon sleep.
I have quite an interesting one here, actually. Not sure who from, but they've said, how do we train for jobs of the future when we don't actually really know what they are?
That's a good question.
No one wants to answer that.
Anyone game to
I'll answer that. No. Anyone want to have a...
So, Shannon and Sally have already kind of mentioned this, I guess. If you're passionate about something, then you will find ways to adapt it to whatever's coming up in the future. And I suppose now I think about it, I could use my own example. As an archaeologist, I was used to looking at things made out of stone and ceramic and bone and all those kinds of objects. And now I've kind of adapted this to looking at, the very particular alloys that you need to make spacecraft out of, and electronic circuits, and looking at what the impacts of space weather and the space environment are on human-made materials. So it's sort of coming from the same place. It's just applied in such a different context. And I guess that's all we can really do in the present, because we don't know what directions things are going to go in. We can try and predict, but things never end up the way you predict. We know that from science fiction. But if you're still working on that thing that you're passionate about and that you love doing, then there are always ways to make it space applicable.
Absolutely. Michael, can I ask one more question? Do we have
Absolutely.
got time? Awesome.
Yep,
this
sure.
one's from Nisha Baker. She's from Adelaide, and this is for everyone and anyone really. She says, I'm wanting to become a space geneticist and working on how best to manipulate the genome to better suit humans to space flight or habitation. So what areas in the world or companies do you think would be most interested in developing that kind of field?
Wow, there's a field I know nothing about.
I know that the biggest problem that NASA is working on at the moment, they've got some of the best minds in the world working on it, and some of my colleagues and I were fortunate enough to work on a small part of it, is, at the moment, if we get astronauts to space, we have a finite amount of time before we're blind. I know the Kelly brothers have done the most extraordinary work in terms of the amount of time a human being has stayed in space. And we have to try and rectify that by having artificial centrifuges in space, vacuum systems to try and take the pressure off the vascular system so there's no pressure on the optic nerve that's causing this space blindness. Lots of astronauts are coming back from long duration stays needing glasses because their eye has changed. And so I think that anyone in medicine, any type of medicine who wants to apply it to space is going to be very successful, because there are research papers and books out at the moment that these are the problems that NASA, SpaceX, EASA, we all can't solve. Who wants to have a crack at it? And a lot of people actually get their foot in the door at these companies because they do some research and they have a go at solving some of these problems. And it's not too difficult to find them if you come through a tertiary institution. So anyone who studies genetics and then reaches out to space institutions would be very successful as becoming a space geneticist.
I should thank people who are in the Q&A as well. Thank you for asking all the questions. Unfortunately, we can't get to everyone tonight, so I hope you understand that, but we're trying to get to as many as we can. I have got one here open to all panelists from Anika. Hello, Anika. Thank you for joining us. Have any of you ever experienced and I'll extend this to you, Coco, as well, any discrimination within the workplace, and how did you respond in terms of, space and so on and the industry?
I have experienced people at events where I have been, a panelist or a specialist speaker like today. I've had people assume that I'm waiting staff, and that's okay. Waiting staff do a very important job, but what it means is that I'm coming from behind the 8 ball. I have to sort of do extra work to get to the point where I can have conversations about the science with people. And that's something, it's a little thing, but it's indicative of a lot of attitudes which are not expecting women to have expertise and experience. And I suppose I navigate these, in the individual circumstances, because people often don't even realize that they're kind of putting you in a box, which is putting you, which makes you have to catch up. So I tend to respond to them according to the circumstance. But I think this is a common experience lots of people have. We have to put work in to establish that we are the people who we are, rather than it being assumed that we actually have the expertise that we claim to have.
Yeah. We're just kept running out of time, so I just need to acknowledge a couple of things. Thank you for that answer there, Alice. sorry to keep pointing too, that's very rude of me. I've got all these screens open in front of me. As I say, we're running out of time. So I just wanted to thank formally, the recording's going to stop very shortly, but we can keep chatting with panelists if they so wish. Shannon, you can go to bed if you want. But if you're in the Q&A, you can stay around, but we're going to stop the recording very shortly. I just wanted to thank officially Sally Tyndall, Shannon McConnell, Alice Gorman, and Coco Dobby, of course, our MC, who's done a fantastic job tonight. I'm going to just invite once more to the screen, James McKechnie, Director of External Engagement at Dubbo campus of Charles Sturt University. I hope. There he is. Hello, James. Oh, he's gone again.
Thanks, Michael. Look, thanks for everyone logging in tonight. One final question will pop up now on your screen for our polls. The question is, would you be interested in participating in similar events in the future? Thank you if you can respond to this poll question. And mirroring Michael, I'd just like to thank officially Dr. Alice Gorman, Sally Tyndall and Shannon McConnell for agreeing to be part of our expert panel this evening. Our fantastic hosts, Coco and Michael, Jackie from One Giant Leap, also Adam Bannister, who was powering the IT behind tonight, and also our unofficial flight commander, Holly Young from Charles Sturt University, who put the whole event together from scratch. We'll make this recording available to you tonight, later on, as well as any answers to any questions that we didn't get to. So keep an eye on your emails where that information will come out to you. So that's it from me. As Michael said, welcome to stick around and have a chat. But thank you. That's the official part of the evening over. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, James. And thank you, everyone. As I said, you're more than welcome to hang around with us for a moment. Panelists, feel free to come and go as you wish. If you need to go, by all means. Shannon, you must be getting very tired.
And I've got a 3-hour board of directors meeting tomorrow, but it doesn't start at 10, so I can sleep in.
At your discretion. Yes. Coco, have you got any more questions there from people?
There are some here. I'm trying to scroll through, see which ones we haven't answered. Oh, sorry,
No, I've got Patricia from Dubbo here, who just wants to know what 0G feels like.
Oh, I saw that.
Falling. Just lovely falling. If she wants to get a scuba diving certification, that's probably one of the closest things that you can do to simulate it, which is why they have the neutral buoyancy lab in Houston. But if you drop off the back of the boat with scuba gear on and you start to slowly descend until you have no visual periphery, until you're just hovering, it's the closest that you get, but we can simulate it a number of ways. There's some 0G trainers that fly parabolic moves, so we can practice experiments and things in the weightless environment. And maybe if she wants to come aerobatics flying with me, we can do some of that kind of stuff too. I don't know where she is, but I'm up for it.
In Dubbo, so yeah.
Scuba diving was my favorite thing.
You're in Melbourne too. Oh, look.
Yeah.
There you go. So am I.
Scuba diving was my favorite thing at Space Camp 2, and I've come home and gotten my open water divers certification. So I'm going for my advanced in a few weeks. So it's amazing. It's my favorite thing.
That's great.
We'll go out looking for sharks together.
Yay. Here's one for Shannon. Someone anonymous has said, do you think a degree in space systems engineering is necessary, beneficial, or not at all necessary for a career in mission planning and mission design?
I saw that come up, and that actually goes back to the question of how do we train for jobs of the future when we don't know what they are? Because I'm old school enough that I don't know what space systems engineering degree looks like in terms of, I mean, when I was in school, most people went through aerospace engineering. So I don't know what that answer would be, actually.
Right.
I did mission planning and mission design. I had a degree in environmental engineering. So just getting back to, I think if you take your skills that you've learned and you can learn on the job. I mean, I got a degree in astronomy. I got my first job at JPL. It was on Magellan, which was a radar data mapping mission. I knew nothing about radar besides that's what they used to track airplanes with. And we were mapping the surface of Venus to look at geology. That's another subject I knew almost not. I took one geology class in college and it was on earthquakes. So, there was immediate on the job training going on. But that's when you learn, that the people that are there, especially the science community, are very willing teachers because guess what? They're all professors. And they're more
Yeah.
than willing to sit down with you and, say that's a volcano and that's how, that's the crater and this is what they look like. So yeah, and my comment is I don't think a space systems engineering degree is required, but it's certainly a path in.
I've got another question here from Stevie who said, how did you choose your specific section of field work, and was that hard for you to determine as opposed to choosing something else in the same kind of field?
Is that for me?
For anyone.
I think anyone, yeah.
Everyone, yeah.
I could mention, I guess, that I chose archaeology because I wanted to find out how humans worked. So it was really just nosiness, you could say, being applied to people in the past. And now, of course, I'm applying it to people currently living in space.
And I always knew that NASA originally wanted test pilots, so I originally became a pilot. And then I knew that you couldn't just be a pilot, you had to be some sort of additional skill set. So I studied psychology and human factors because I just thought that on every mission there's specialists. There's someone to drive the remote manipulator arm. There's a botanist that's going to grow the plants. There's someone that's going to be doing the experiments. But what I noticed was a common feature amongst all missions from Apollo all the way through to Space Shuttle to ISS missions is there's someone who has to have a psychology medic kind of understanding to try and take care of everyone. So I wanted to give myself a broad skill set to give myself the best chance of not putting all my eggs in one basket and becoming a mission specialist and then getting bumped because the mission has changed. So I'm just trying to give myself the best amount of skills to be picked for whatever missions come up in the future. And even I'm, in the shortlist for Advancing X, but I don't actually know what they're going to ask us to do in 2023. I keep trying to find out. But of course, space is a huge industry, and as people buy time on the International Space Station and other weightless environments to run experiments, launch satellites, money talks. And so I think it's best for people to just follow what they're passionate in, make it known to the world that you want to be in space, and the job will follow. Whereas if you try chasing someone else's path, you're going to be no better than them. And I don't want you to be me. I want you to be better than me. So do you. That's always what I tell people.
Awesome. Michael,
you sorry? No, go ahead.
Sorry, no, I was just going to say how many more questions?
I've been notified we've got time for one more question. So do you want to take that, to have the honor of asking that, Coco?
Oh gosh, I don't know. There's so many. I don't want to disappoint anyone.
And thank you again, everyone who's still watching, and thank you for your questions. We really appreciate it. We try to get to all of them, but unfortunately we can't, and we'll try and follow up with something down the track.
Our last question, by the looks of it, the one that we haven't answered is from, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, is from Sarah, who said her 8-year-old niece is very interested in space and has dreams of going there. And as her auntie, what can she do to foster that love and passion? I think that applies not just to Sarah, but to everyone and anyone looking to go into space, kind of thing. So that's open for everyone.
I think one thing that can be done, if you look around, particularly in Australia at the moment, there's space events going on all the time, just like the one we're at tonight. There are events being held at planetariums. There's planetariums in most capital cities, a lot of regional cities, and even some traveling ones. Museums are a fantastic place to go and see space objects and astronomical objects and look at different things and get excited about things. So there's space stuff going on all the time that people can go to or access or be part of. And I think, being here tonight is a great way to kick that off. So just keep your eye out for events that are happening. And I'm sure the 8-year-old is going to find plenty to keep their passion going.
Exciting stuff. It's exciting stuff. Just want to thank you all again. We're wrapping up now. Thank you to everyone, all the participants who've joined in and tuned in to watch. Really glad you made it tonight. Hope you've enjoyed it. Again, I know you've officially been thanked, but Sally, Shannon, Alice, and of course, Coco, thanks again so much. I've got one very quick question for Alice. What's your favorite iteration of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? The book, the radio series, the TV show, or the movie?
Oh, not a fan of the movie.
No,
Love
me
the
neither.
book. Love the TV show. Never heard the radio series. So
Oh, you've got to turn the lights off and listen.
I didn't know there was a radio series.
It's the first iteration. Anyway, I digress. Shannon, you need to sleep. Thank you, Shannon, for a big round of applause for Shannon too, by the way, for sticking this out. It's
Staying up.
late there. It's what, 2:10 in the morning.
it is.
Thank you, everyone. Coco, I'll let you sign off.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, guys. I'm sure everyone's gotten heaps out of today. I've gotten so much out of listening to you all. And like I said, it is one day, hopefully, I'm going to be in space too. So everything you've said and anything you're going to say is going to be so helpful. I think that's pretty much it. Thank you to everyone who sent in their questions, and keep sending in questions. Someone will answer them sometime if you didn't get yours answered today. So thank you.
Take care, everyone. Live long and prosper.